Being both trans and a Christian, I've had many odd experiences where I am very well understood by one group in some ways and not by others, and very well understood by the other group in some ways and not by others. And a good example of this is when I try to talk about certain hopes I have or like certain personal experiences or just feelings I have. I have a coworker who falls under the trans umbrella, and if I were to talk to that coworker about my experiences of gender dysphoria, they'd 100% understand what I'm talking about. We could have pretty normal discussion about it and it'd be fine. But if I brought up my hope for the end of the world, they freak out and they're like, that's a horrible thing. Don't say that sort of thing. Don't think that kind of thing. And even if I try to explain, like, oh no, this is a positive thing, or I don't hate the world, whatever, it's just beyond them. It's not a sentiment that they personally can understand. And I'm not saying this to shame them, but it's just, it's clear that this is not something that I'm going to be understood on. And now that I'm back home, I'm talking with a lot of my friends about Christian stuff, and a lot of my friends back home here are Christian. And, I just had a lovely chat yesterday with someone, with a cis man about the end of the world. But I think if I brought up a lot of my personal experiences as a trans person, he'd listen, but I don't think he'd understand any of them, because, why would he? And what I find interesting about this is, to me, those two feelings are so incredibly similar. Or, like, they're both a feeling of dissonance or dysphoria. So when someone understands one and not the other, it's like, but they're so similar, like, we're so close. So I just thought I'd make this little video where I'm just kind of talking, no biblical citations, just my own personal experience, to explain how similar they are. And maybe then, someone who sees this, who understands gender dysphoria, would then understand my hope for the end times. And maybe someone who's Christian and understands my sentiments about the end of the world, maybe hearing this might give them a little bit more insight of what it's like to be a trans person. So I'll start with gender dysphoria and say a lot of people misunderstand it and assume it means that I hated my body or thought my body was bad or wrong. And they act as if it's like a very mental thing and as if it's a hate-filled thing. Or for me, it was always just an experience of pain, and it was a very emotional experience. And I know you're going to say, oh, emotions are in the brain, but like poetically speaking, emotions are in the heart, thoughts are in the brain, whatever. The heart is the seat of the soul in a lot of traditional religions too, but that's whatever. Where it was pain, and for me, transitioning addressed that pain. So when some people say to me, like, why couldn't you accept yourself as you are? Why couldn't you love yourself as you are? It's like, I did. I loved myself enough that I wanted to treat my pain. I loved myself enough that I wanted to improve my body. I never hated my body. I loved it enough to try to help it. Due to gender dysphoria, I suffered from a restrictive eating disorder for about a decade, which is really scary because I think 33% of people with anorexia nervosa die, either of the eating disorder itself or just complications, because something that atrophies your muscles also atrophies the muscles in your heart also, so I had an eating disorder, and for me, medically transitioning was what enabled me to heal and recover from my eating disorder. And if I truly hated my body, there wouldn't be a point in trying to recover. There wouldn't be a point in trying to improve my body or my life at all. And I see this same, people say, why couldn't you just accept yourself as you are? I see people say, well, why couldn't you just wear men's clothing, call yourself a man? And it's like, because that wouldn't address the pain I was experiencing. That would be nice. It would be nice if I could wear the clothing I wanted to wear, and if people in society would treat me with basic human respect. Like, yeah, I completely agree, that would be a good thing, but that wouldn't do anything to address the pain I was feeling. So I should do that and, seek help for what I needed help with, and I did, and I'm very happy for it now. I have a good relationship with myself, I have a good relationship with others, I feel comfortable in my body, like, yeah, whatever. But there's always this, I often see cis people acting as if gender dysphoria means you hate yourself or you hate your body, and acting as if trans people necessarily have to hate themselves. And they don't understand that, like, identifying pain or identifying a problem and then seeking to remedy that problem or seeking to help ease pain and help yourself, that is an act of self-love. That isn't an act of self-hate. And that's how I feel about the world, and that's how I feel about the world ending. I love this world. I'm not some Gnostic dualist where I think material is inherently evil and only spiritual matters are good, so you have to hate and reject this physical world and reach enlightenment. I love this physical world. And when I say I want the world to end, when I say I want Christ to come back, I don't mean that as a, oh, I hate this world, I can't wait to get out of this, I want to be in a new world, but I think this world is absolutely wonderful. I think this world is beautiful, but it has flaws, but it can be improved. But this world is fundamentally broken in ways that cause pain and suffering for all living beings. And looking at that pain and saying this should be addressed, this should be improved, that is not coming from a point of hate. That is coming from, I love this world, I love the beings in it, I want the world to improve both for itself and for those beings. That's something where I think that obviously we're not supposed to just hate this world, like shut it out and wait for the end times. Some people do. I know I just brought up Gnostics, but this is something that frustratingly I've seen with Jehovah's Witnesses, where they'll look at, they'll look at a housing crisis, or they'll look at hunger in various countries, or they'll look at child abuse, and they'll say, there's nothing we can do to stop this. This world is inherently broken. We just have to wait for God to implement the new order. And they actively discourage people from trying to make the world a better place. They think you should only do evangelism, and you should just wait for God to bulldoze all this and make a new world. And I think that that's just the most horrible thing to think. I think, when God created all of this creation and declared it good, if you're going to now come around and declare it evil, wrong. And I also just think it's bad to say any situation is hopeless, because if you can't save the world. I could never make hunger just not exist anywhere in the world, but you could definitely make it so that one hungry family in your community has food to eat. And if everyone did something like that, the world would get a lot better. So, telling someone the situation is hopeless and they might as well do nothing, that's never the right solution. But when I say that I look forward to the end of the world, what I mean is I can't wait for the world to improve. I think people my age, this will be people who are just broadly ending one chapter of their life, possibly, exiting higher education for the final time, possibly moving out from their parents' place for the first time, just people roughly in my stage of life get hit with a dysphoria of sorts, where, you have to ask yourself, what job would I be happy doing? Or what kind of life would I be happy living? And for me, I ask myself this, and I don't think I would be truly happy in any job. And I mean, that doesn't mean I wouldn't be happier in some than others. I'd rather be a professor than be an office worker or something. But when I think about what makes me happy, it's, time spent with my friends, time spent in nature. I love cooking. I love making clothing, all this stuff I love. And it's well, would you be happy doing a job related to those things? And it's yes, but also it being a job would take away some of the happiness of the hobbies. And even my dream job, I can imagine there'd be many days where I don't want to wake up, and I don't want to go to work, and I don't want to do this. And when I think about what I'm built to do, which is, enjoy time with other people, enjoy time in nature, create things, care for things, that's what it was like in the Garden of Eden. And, I feel this homesickness for Eden that could also be called world dysphoria, where what I want from this world and what I expect from this world is incongruent with what I'm actually experiencing in this world, and it causes me heartbreak, and it causes me distress, and it causes me pain. So the idea that this world can be improved, this world can be refined, one day this world will be in the perfect state that right now it not being in is causing me pain, I look forward to that, and that's not a negative thing. That doesn't mean I hate this world. It just means, I want the pain to be decreased. I want this world to improve. I want things to get better, and I want things to get better because I love this world and because I love the people in it. And I see there's a little fly on me. It's not hurting anyone, so I'm gonna leave it there. There's also an ant on me. So the way I feel about this world and the way I feel about society is the same way I felt about my own body when it came to gender dysphoria. And it's a call for healing, and it's a call for healing that comes from love. And someone might ask, okay, well, in this metaphor, what would be the world equivalent of transitioning? If that's what helped you with your gender dysphoria, like, well, what does the world need to do? And I'll say that I'm quite partial to spiritual worldviews where engaging with the world is part of healing it. Like, I really love the idea in Lurianic Kabbalah that, observant Jews, every time they observe the commandments, like a commandment, every time they do an act of charity, every single time something like that happens, a spark of divinity is lifted back up from this world, like, to God. And then when all the sparks go back to God, God and the Shekinah are reunited, and the Messiah will come, and the world will be fixed. I really like that idea because it frames, like, active participation in this world and active participation in faith as the means of repairing this world, and it's repairing this world out of love, and out of love for your fellow people. So I love that. From a more, like, Christian thing, I'm an occultist. I know that's the whole point of this channel, is I talk about, like, occult stuff, and I barely do that. That's what the whole point was going to be. I very often just go through phases where I get really, really, really into Enochian magic. And part of the Enochian workings is that the more you work with these angels, the more you work with these beings, you're bringing the end of the world closer. And I view that as a fundamentally good thing. So I view that as you're restoring the world, you're repairing the world, and you're helping this world draw close to God. Other people might look at that in a more doomsday, more negative way. But it's like, I don't have hope for the doomsday, I have hope for the apocalypse, for the revelation, for the unveiling, And it's sad. Like, it's sad, in my opinion, that other people don't see it that way. Like, if I'm talking to my coworker about wanting the world to end, they assume I'm some, depressed misanthrope. And they don't assume I'm someone where I want to help people. I already made this point in my main video, but I wanted to just double down on it, or just, like, explicitly say it again, because unless a Christian is, like, really, really end of the world minded, like, really, really fixated on that side of the religion, maybe they don't think about the end of the world that much, so maybe the only Eden dysphoria that they do feel is fear of the future. Where for me, growing up, I could not imagine a future in which I'd be happy living as a woman. Both socially, both body-wise, like, in any sense of the word. And that doesn't mean that there wouldn't be happiness at all in any of those futures. Like, yeah, I would still have friends, I could still get a job I liked, I could still have hobbies I liked, but overall, I wouldn't be happy. Overall, there would be an incongruence or a pain that wouldn't be there, and I could easily imagine futures living as a man. I'm living in one of those futures right now, very happily. And the fear of the future that I'm highlighting for some, like, Christians would be like, if you can't imagine any job where you'd be truly happy, yeah, there'd be some happiness. You could have hobbies outside of your job. You might have friends. Oh, you'd still have your church community. But, like, if you're giving, like, 8 hours a day, like, 6 days out of the week to something that makes you absolutely miserable, if you cannot imagine yourself being happy in our current fallen, broken society, which obviously I'm speaking as someone who has, born and raised in America, so I'm talking about, like, American capitalism, but there are different social issues faced by countries all over the world. If in whatever country you're in, you cannot imagine a future where you're truly happy, and, like, yeah, there's happiness in all of those futures, but you're not really happy believing that any of those will actually be you one day. One day that future you will be you. That is, like, the Eden dysphoria I'm describing, where it's like, if the only happy future you can think of for yourself is in the new heavens and new earth, the new paradise, like, that's exactly what I'm talking about, where if you don't spend all your day thinking about the end of the world, but you do spend all your day thinking about, am I ever going to be happy? Am I ever going to carve out a chunk of this world where I feel like I can truly be myself
am, if those are the types of thoughts you have, it's like that is the dysphoria I'm describing. And in my opinion, it's analogous to gender dysphoria because that's how I felt trying to imagine a future living as a cisgender woman. I'll go back to the main video. I just wanted to double down on this point.
So yeah, I think that's all I had to say. This was very rambly and very unscripted, so I'm sorry about that. But I'm hoping that ultimately I made my point that my experience as a Christian and my feelings as a Christian towards this world, and my experiences as a trans person, and my feelings as a trans person towards my own body, never were hate. They were only pain. They were only discomfort. And that pain and discomfort can only arise if you love the world or your body, and if you hope for a better future for the world or for your body. And in that way, I'd say both those feelings are dysphoria. I had gender dysphoria, and now I have, Eden dysphoria. And because those feelings are just so identical in my heart, my hope is that Christians would be able to understand trans people well, that trans people would be able to understand Christians well. And, if you're a cis atheist, I'm sorry, but, I'm sure you have hope in your own ways in your life, and you can understand why my hope manifests in this way. I hope if you watched this, you got something out of it, even if it's just relating to it as a Christian or trans person. And if you're a trans person watching this, I hope that your life and your body can improve. I hope you can treat the pain that you have. And if you're a Christian watching this, I hope in my generation Christ will return, and I hope we can all enjoy Eden together soon. I love you all. I hope you all have a great day. Bye!